Hello everyone. Today the topic of our discussion is the Union Legislature. In our discussion on the Union Legislature, today we will be highlighting on the Rajya Sabha. To ensure the democratic polity, the Parliament stands at the core of the political institutions of India. The Union Legislature is known as the Parliament. The Indian Parliament is basically based on the principle of bicameralism, which means that there are two houses or two chambers in the Parliament. These two chambers are the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. The lower house or the House of the People is popularly known as the Lok Sabha, while the upper house or the Council of States is well known as the Rajya Sabha. The president happens to occupy the highest position in the parliament. Just below the president are the two houses, the Lok Sabha, which is being indicated on the left-hand side of the diagram, and the Rajya Sabha, cited on the right-hand side. The Lok Sabha is presided by the Speaker of the House, and in his absence, it is the Deputy Speaker who takes over his functions. While in case of Rajya Sabha, it is the chairman or the vice president who happens to be the ex officio chairman of the House. Now, in the absence of the chairman, it is the deputy chairman who discharges all the functions of the chairman. The president is an integral part of the parliament, though he is not a member of the legislature. In fact, the president, his action is ensured, his participation is ensured in the legislature by making him an integral part of the parliament. Now, before we discuss anything on the Rajya Sabha, it is essential for us to know why the framers of the Indian Constitution has at all adopted a parliamentary system of government instead of a presidential one. First of all, the basic objective of the framers of the Indian Constitution was to achieve unity through the mechanism of popular government by uniting the Indians into one electorate mass. The framers of the Constitution also wanted to provide direct representatives of the people and also to ensure the universal adult franchise, which culminated in none other than a parliamentary system of government. Secondly, it had been pointed out that the parliamentary system had accommodated almost all the impediments that seem to have bothered the framers of our constitution on the eve of independence. The basic objectives like, for instance, the independence of judiciary, the supremacy of the constitution, the democratic polity, ensuring of democracy in our country, to retain the federal principle, all this would not have been possible without a parliamentary system of government. Finally, the institution of a parliament seems to be the only optional mechanism left for the framers of our constitution to ensure a harmonious coexistence between the center and the states. Now let us begin our discussion on the Rajya Sabha. The Rajya Sabha is an indirectly elected second chamber of the House. The issue of the utility of the second chamber had no wonder cropped up within the Constituent Assembly, though it had not generated severe controversy. In fact, two propositions had been forwarded to hammer out the usefulness of the second chamber. And these two propositions were, first of all, as has been pointed out by almost every federations all over the world, that the second chamber becomes a custodian of the interest of the units of a federation, and it helps in retaining the federal structure of the country. Secondly, it was expected that the second chamber is likely to hold debates and discussions over important issues and even delay the legislation whenever situation so demands, and wait till the momentary passions is subsided and the calm consideration is bestowed before the legislature. Now, so far as the Rajya Sabha is concerned, we all know that the composition, the Constituent Assembly was unanimous so far as the usefulness of the second chamber is concerned. But there were divergent of opinions whenever the composition, regarding the composition, the maximum number of members and the functions of the House is concerned. Several suggestions were forwarded in this regard by the members of the Constituent Assembly. Some argued in favor of equality of status among states, while others denounced it as undemocratic and outdated. There were some who argued in favor of proportional representation. In fact, they welcomed the very method of the proportional representation, while there were others who were against this indirect method of election. Again, there were some who discarded the very principle of nomination, while there were many who wanted a functional representation. Now, despite severe discontentment among the members of the Constituent Assembly, however, it was found that not several modifications was required to be made. Now, let us see the composition of the House Council of States. Out of the total number of members limited for the Council of States happened to be 250. Out of these 250 members, 12 members were to be nominated by the President of India. Now, the rest and the remaining 238 members are to be elected indirectly from the different states and the union territories. The members of the Rajya Sabha, for our convenience, can be classified under the following categories. First comes the nominated members, as being already stated that out of the 250 members, 12 members are nominated by the Indian President, who are nominated from amongst persons who are experts in the field of science, literature, art or social service. The principle of nomination was introduced in our constitution to incorporate the expertise knowledge of these distinguished personalities within the parliament. Second members of the Rajya Sabha happen to be the representatives of the state. Now, they are indirectly elected by the elected members of the state legislature by means of proportional representation with a single transferable vote system. Third comes the representatives of the union territories. They are elected and the procedure of their election is being laid down by the acts of the parliament, and accordingly it has been found that these members are elected indirectly by the members of an electoral college of that territory and by means of proportional representation with a single transferable vote system. So far as the Rajya Sabha is concerned, the composition of Rajya Sabha is concerned, it is interesting to note that the Rajya Sabha is a permanent body. This means permanent body just like the American Senate. This means that the members of the Rajya Sabha or the House, the Rajya Sabha itself, is a continuing house in which and is not subject to dissolution like the Lok Sabha in the Indian Parliament. In fact, the members are elected indirectly for a period of 6 years. After every 2 years, an election is being held in which 1/3 members retire, and fresh election is being conducted for those vacant seats, while 2/3 members continue to be re-elected in the House. Now, this particular provision ensures to retain the political stability of the House as compared to that of the Lok Sabha, which is always a new house after every fresh general election. Now, apart from so far as the composition is concerned, the method, the way it has been composed, has been subjected to severe criticism. First of all, it had been pointed out that the nominated members are likely to show their allegiance more towards the center instead of representing the states, and this will tilt the balance of power at crucial moments of division. Secondly, it has been pointed out that the way the Rajya Sabha has been composed is actually goes against the conventions and the federal structure of the country. In fact, the very composition based on population actually makes it gives a greater advantage to the bigger states. Finally, as MP Sharma points out, that the members of the Rajya Sabha are not, they neither represent the people nor do they represent the government or the state legislature. In fact, he says so since it is believed that after every general election in a state, a new government is formed who is unable to control the members of the Rajya Sabha who were elected in the earlier regime. So far as the composition is concerned, we have a clear idea on it. Now let us get back to the presiding officers of the Council of States. The Council of States, there are two presiding officers so far as the Council of States are concerned, and these two presiding officers are the chairman and the deputy chairman. The Vice President of India is the ex officio chairman of the House, and at times of emergency, he is often expected to play the role of the President in his absence. And we find that when he is performing the role of the President, he is not expected to perform his duties as a chairman of the Rajya Sabha. In his absence, it is the deputy chairman who takes over his place. The chairman is not a member of the House, but the deputy chairman is a member of the House and he is elected by the House itself. The deputy chairman has the functions. The deputy chairman is empowered to discharge all the functions and the duties of the chairman in his absence. Now, the Rajya Sabha also has a provision to empanel a number of members, and they are called the deputy chairmen. They are nominated by the chairman and they are asked to preside over the House once the chairman and the deputy chairman and asked to preside over the House once in the absence of both the chairman and the deputy chairman. Now let us see the criteria to become a member of the Rajya Sabha. The essential qualifications required in this regard are, first of all, the person must be a citizen of India, secondly, must be of 30 years of age, and finally, he must have all the necessary qualification as laid down by the Acts of the Parliament. Now, along with the eligibility criteria, it is worthwhile to go through the conditions required, the condition when a member of the Rajya Sabha is also disqualified. First of all, a person who is holding any office of profit under the government of India or the state government, except by those which are exempted by the Acts of the Parliament. Secondly, being of unsound mental conditions which are being declared by the competent court. Thirdly, if the person is not a citizen of the country. Fourth, being an undischarged bankrupt. Fifthly, if a member fails to attend all the meetings and the sessions of the Rajya Sabha within a period of 6 months without notifying the House, or if he or she is expelled from the House. And finally, being disqualified under any law of the Parliament. Now let us discuss the powers and functions of the Rajya Sabha. First, we will be discussing about the legislative power. Now, so far as the non-money bill are concerned, the Rajya Sabha has almost equal power with that of the Lok Sabha. An ordinary bill can be originated in either of the two houses and it may be passed in both the houses. But So in this way, but in case of disagreement between the two houses, there is a provision in the constitution that a joint session being called by the President of India, and it is presided by the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. This provision actually makes Rajya Sabha a position superior than his counterpart in Britain, that is the House of Lords. But at the same time, it must be noted that it is also not so strong as that of the American Senate. Its limitations, so far as the powers are concerned, is basically due to three reasons. First of all, in a joint session, the presiding officer is the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. Secondly, the numerical strength of the Lok Sabha gives an additional advantage to the lower house. Finally, the very initiative of calling a joint session actually depends on the decision of the Council of Ministers, who are collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. Now let us discuss the executive powers of the Rajya Sabha. Though it is true that the Council of Ministers are collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha, yet it cannot be denied that the Rajya Sabha too can exert its control over the activities of the government. How it can do so? For instance, it can raise questions in the floor of the House. It can also go for a call attention motion. The members of the Rajya Sabha can also table important resolutions. Thirdly is the financial powers of the Rajya Sabha. In matters of finance, we find that the Rajya Sabha is basically powerless. Money bill originates only in the Lok Sabha, and it has to be passed by the Rajya Sabha within a period of 14 days. There are certain areas of power where the authority of the Rajya Sabha is equal with that of the Lok Sabha. Let us examine these powers. First of all, the Rajya Sabha enjoys superior, or the Rajya Sabha enjoys same authority with that of the Lok Sabha in the case of constitutional amendment, which requires the approval of both the houses and is passed by a special majority. The bill regarding constitutional amendment can be originated in either house of the parliament. Secondly, the Rajya Sabha also shares equal powers with that of the Lok Sabha with regard to the election and the removal of the President of India. Thirdly, the Rajya Sabha, so far as the proclamation of emergency by the President of India requires the approval of both the houses. Fourthly, the tabling or the annual reports of the autonomous agencies like the UPSC, minority commissions, or Controller and Auditor General, and so on, requires the approval of both the houses. Fifthly, so far as the appointment, the power of appointment is concerned, the union government may take away the power of appointment from the purview of the UPSC only if it has the approval of the Rajya Sabha as well. Sixthly, it has been found that the president of every issue of every order of the president with regard to the suspension of the enforcement of the fundamental rights requires the approval of both the houses. Seventhly, Rajya Sabha enjoys equal powers with that of the Lok Sabha in case of setting up of martial law courts during the national emergency. And finally, so far as delegated legislation is concerned or the rules of the various departments are concerned, all these things required the approval of both the houses. So far as a critical study of the of the Rajya Sabha is concerned, certain points needs elaboration. First of all, apart from the limitations which had been discussed earlier regarding the composition of the Rajya Sabha, there were certain other limitations highlighted by the critics. Let us examine these weaknesses. First of all, the principle of distribution of seats according to the principle of distribution of seats according to the factor of population is unjust in the sense that it tends to give a greater priority to the bigger states. Secondly, the method of indirect election may make convenient for an affluent person to purchase votes and thereby gets the privilege of being a member of the House. Thirdly, the method of indirect election gives an opportunity to the minor political parties in the state to secure some seats in the Rajya Sabha. The result is that these minor parties ends up in fulfilling the demands of their parties and do not represent the state as a whole. So the basic objective behind the formation of the Rajya Sabha gets to be lost. Fourthly, it has been pointed out that the actual working of the Rajya Sabha has failed to fulfill the aspirations of the founding fathers, who believed that the expertise knowledge of the distinguished personalities could be incorporated within the parliament. Though there is no doubt that there were some members whose debates had been discussed even after a long time, but there were again members in the recent years who had failed to become a member in the Lok Sabha but has an influential position in the party, lands up being a member of the Rajya Sabha. Not only that, the members who happens to be closely associates with the chief minister often gets a place in the Rajya Sabha. So, apart from this, finally, it had been criticized that it had been pointed out, and what is worth mentioning is the unprecedented change that takes place in the functioning of the upper chamber when a particular party has a comfortable majority in the Rajya Sabha but occupies the bench of opposition in the Lok Sabha. Such an incident had occurred in the year 1977 when the Janata Party formed the union government at the Lok Sabha and the Congress had an absolute majority so far as the Rajya Sabha is concerned. Now, the strength of the house could be felt when two of the important officials' bills were were stalled by the Congress members on April 11, 1977. Almost a similar situation can be traced in the recent years when the Modi government had a full absolute majority in the Lok Sabha but tends to fail in passing a bill in the Rajya Sabha. However, despite the limitations, it cannot be denied that the Rajya Sabha had succeeded in not letting its floor to be a battleground between the centers and the states. What is desirable is that both the houses, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, should act in cooperation with each other, as neither of the two houses comprises the parliament. In fact, both the houses, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, taken together formed the Parliament of India.